Welcome to the webinar, Cleaning Your Water Well System for Health and System Operation. I'm Cliff Trines, Director of General Public Outreach for the National Groundwater Association. It is my privilege to introduce our presenter, Stuart Smith, a partner in Smith-Comeskey Ground Water Science in Ohio. Mr. Smith specializes in well maintenance and rehabilitation. He's been consulting in hydrogeology, groundwater microbiology, and well system maintenance and rehabilitation for nearly 3 decades. He's also the author or co-author of numerous studies and publications on water well related matters. During the presentation, feel free to type questions in the question box. At the conclusion of Mr. Smith's presentation, he will answer your questions. So without further delay, I'll turn it over to you, Stu.
Okay, thank you, Cliff. Cleaning your water well system for health and system operation. This is something that we've been encouraging homeowners and small well owners to do. It's not something that's been most people traditionally think about very much, but so we appreciate that you're here and interested in this topic, and we look forward to your questions. So first of all, how do I know if my well needs to be cleaned? That well out there doesn't always give you a lot of feedback, and so sometimes you have to go looking for the information. For example, how do I know if my well needs to be cleaned? One symptom will be that the water is cloudy or silty or sandy in some way. That is, it's not clear and fresh as it should be. It may smell bad, for example, that rotten egg smell or other unpleasant odors that smell like things that died or something, and literally that can be the case. It may taste bad, for example, fishy or some kind of off taste, something that you notice is different than it used to be. Your well also may need to be cleaned if there's a loss of capacity, that is the gallons per minute or liters per hour that the pump supplies to the water system. And you can tell this by testing how long it takes to fill a bucket or a tank. And if that is slowed down since the past, it's possible that your either combination of your pump and your well need to be rehabilitated, cleaned, and perhaps further work done on it. These symptoms can be, and typically are, due to fouling of the well system by bacteria and other microorganisms, and this is often in combination with minerals or sediment naturally in formation. And in the case of the blockage of the screen, it's often more the case of the minerals and the stuff that the bacteria make than actual bacteria count themselves. Now, to determine if the well needs to be cleaned due to microorganisms and their activities, there should be some tests run. And these tests come under different categories. For example, some are related to sanitation. Those are for example, the coliform tests or the E. coli tests that are run to determine sanitation of a drinking water supply. And these should be run by a certified drinking water lab. There are some other processes, microbiological tests that are available now that are related to the process and related to the clogging and the formation of minerals and bad odors and so forth. And these aren't always run by laboratories, but they may be run by a qualified groundwater professional. That is someone who is familiar with, experienced with, and using these tests. Some further things, just before you go into the certified lab test, which can take 24 to 48 hours to get results back, there are actually some quick tests on the market for sanitary conditions, and these can be used to give you a quick response, or could be used in a remote area where availability of certified labs might not, just might not be available to you. And then finally, when you have all these results, you want to talk to a qualified water system professional. Again, that is one who is qualified to discuss the microbiology and to plan a solution. Water well professionals or groundwater professionals have different kinds of qualifications. Not everybody's the same, and some people are more qualified to do one thing or another. So, you should seek out that person that's familiarized with this biological fouling and biocorrosion. Once you have done the testing and you've checked with a qualified water system professional, that professional can advise you on whether well cleaning is indicated and how you should do it. There's numerous ways to do it. Sometimes you leave things alone, and sometimes you clean it. And that's typically, go to a person that's done this before and talk it out. Now, a question I have to those of you who are out there, and whether you respond or not, at least work it out in your own mind, is I'm curious about what brought you here. Since most well owners never think about well cleaning, it's pretty obvious that you probably have some experience with this, and something has prompted you to seek out the information here. And the NGWA and myself, we would certainly appreciate hearing some feedback from you. So what is it needs to be cleaned in my well? First of all, the bottom of the well, this is where material accumulates. The biofouling that chips off the sides and drops to the bottom, any sand or silt that may filter in. And often you get accumulations in the bottom of the well, and this is where some of the sanitary problems can occur. For example, this is a good place to harbor coliform bacteria, and you get a bad coliform test. So cleaning out the bottom of the well is definitely part of the job. Secondly, the well casing itself. The well casing is the primary structure of the well, the part that probably sticks up out of the ground where your well is. And this is a large surface, and when it's wet and between the part where the static water level and the pumping water level is, it's exposed to oxygen, and this is a great place for bacteria to grow, and so that needs to be cleaned off for the most part in a domestic well. And then finally, any screened or water intake zones down at the well screen is the part that basically keeps the sediment out and lets the water in, and this can get to be clogged up, and so that needs to be cleaned out as part of the process. And then finally, outside of the screen will often be the gravel pack. In this case, what you're seeing here is an engineered gravel pack, which is a two-level screen. Gravel pack can also be just installed loosely outside of the screen between the well screen and the formation. And this is the place where clogging and accumulation of bacteria occurs. And also the water well intake screens themselves may develop mineral incrustations, and this may be with or without bacterial contribution. And when those slots in the well screen fill up, and by the way, they're not nearly as big as they look in this video. Whenever you see a well video, everything looks really big, and it's often much smaller than it is. But still, the screen intakes here, for example, are clogged and need loosened up. And cleaning these screens improves the well's ability to deliver water, as you can imagine, before and after in these two videos, not from the same well. So how is a well system cleaned? There are basically put them in two categories and they work together. One is mechanical methods, that is, you're physically moving a tool or moving air or liquids to knock things loose. Second are chemical methods. Chemical methods are used. They are always used in combination with some suitable mechanical method. I like to make an analogy to dishwashing or cleaning out a bottle, and when you're doing something like a surgeon, like a thermos bottle or something of that nature, you know that you're going to use soap on it, but typically you probably need some kind of physical agitation as well, and one works best with the other. Now, there are a variety of mechanical methods for well cleaning, including brushing, and this is good for getting deposits off the casing, as we described, and getting thicker deposits off. And the kind of brush I like is the one on the right, which is a softer brush, which doesn't gouge into the casing and screen quite so badly. As far as part of it goes is you need mechanical motion, and one of the best ways to do it, even though it's an old-fashioned method to some people, is the cable tool surging, shown here, in which cable tool rig moves a surge block up and down, and in this case it's shown with in one of its optimal forms with air assist, which helps float material out of the well during the surging process, and with chemical mixing. So what you see here in the slide on the right is in many ways the whole package for wells, not the deepest wells like 1,000 feet or so, but wells upwards of a few hundred feet. There are other methods too. For example, simply air surging with a 1 or 2 pipe air tool. This could be done with a drilling rig or with a large air compressor. And another method is jetting with water under high pressure, which loosens up deposits on the screen. Now, chemical methods, the primary means of chemical well cleaning is use of acids, and I say this with a great deal of caution, and just realize there's qualifiers here. The acid is used to remove those mineral deposits, the iron, the manganese, heavy buildup of calcium carbonate. And here's where the qualifiers come in. The acid chosen must be appropriate for the problem, that is, a bacterial clog, and not just any acid or the strongest stuff you can ever find. And it has to be safe to use in a drinking water supply. That is, just not everything that you buy at the big box store to clean off bricks or something like that, but it has to be appropriate for the purpose. I prefer that all chemicals used be entirely free of any phosphorus compounds. Phosphorus is a big part of the problem with those green algae blooms that are plaguing our lakes and streams these days. And the same thing happens down in a well if you put phosphorus to it. So the acid is there to remove the deposits, and these deposits occur, of course, in the well screen. And what you see here is a real extreme example of the well screen. Usually it looks plugged off, but it's not, like hard and crusty and turned into a pipe like this one is, but it's just a good illustration example. Again, the gravel or filter pack outside of the screen, and the nearby geologic formation. You're only cleaning out to maybe a few inches at most outside of the screen, but that's where most of the damage is occurring. So well cleaning then is finished by agitation, and that is once you've loosened up all this material with the mechanical tools and with the chemistry, you then basically swish it out with agitation. Usually this, again, with the surge blocks and the airlift, or the airlift tool used by itself. The uh, developed out material which consists of sand and silt and loosened up biofouling and minerals and so on. It's then cleaned out. It's pumped out and away from the well, and until it's clear, until you're sure you've got as much out that you possibly can. So it's flushed out. And it's important to note that this shouldn't just be flushed out anywhere. It should be flushed out into some kind of containment, which does not need to be elaborate. It could be a bunch of plastic tarps set up so that it contains the fluid and possibly have some material like soda ash in it, which neutralizes any remaining acid that may be there. You don't want to just pump that stuff right onto the ground or right onto your neighbor's rose bushes, or definitely not into the storm sewer and into the street. So keep those things in mind to keep that stuff contained for a while. And the last part of a good well cleaning is finishing with a low dosage chlorine dose, which is circulated, allowed to sit for a while, and then again pumped off at the end. Now all this is a little bit backwards from some advice on well chlorination that you might have heard in the past, which has been really, really hard to change people's minds on that. But it used to be that, hey, you just dump a bottle of chlorine into the top of the well and let it sit and then pump it off, and that's well cleaning. You're obviously, from what we're describing here, that has changed, and we have a lot of information to back all this up. But realizing also that chlorination only works properly when you clean something out. And again, if you go back to cleaning anything else you can think of, your dishes, a bucket out in the garage or something like that, that it works better when chemistry or anything like that works better when it's clean, like cleaning out a wound, so you don't get infected again. But the chlorine doesn't have to be big, and there are charts for this that show you just how much you can use. It's well under a gallon for most domestic water wells in the United States of chlorine compound. So it may seem self-serving from a groundwater professional organization, but it really is a case that you should involve a qualified water system professional in this process to both determine what it is and for the most part to perform the work. They're going to help you understand the nature of the problem and the condition of the well, determine how severe it is, so how much chemistry to use and what chemistry to use and what tools to use. And other considerations that go along with that, all decent well cleaning requires the temporary removal of the pump and equipment for proper cleaning. Okay, in this case, in this picture you can see the well casing and you can see the pump. You can see the pump is a large percentage of the diameter of the well screen, and that has to be out of the way so that the tools can be put into the well and operated properly. And this is where the groundwater professional who's done this before repeatedly is going to understand what to do instead of, otherwise intelligent and observant homeowner may not have seen all the ramifications of this, even though it doesn't look like it should be too hard if you've looked at a few YouTube videos. The equipment itself should be kept away from bacterial contamination. So when you pull the pump out like this, it should be laid down on clean plastic or up on blocks or something like that. And it itself should be examined and cleaned out, chlorinated before it's put back in. And finally, everything should be cleaned before it puts back in. Just reiterating, leave this leave this to the professionals. That's, obviously you can do what you want, but this is certainly our advice. Just think of it this way. You're not trying to learn these techniques on your own water well supply. You probably have to answer to someone else in the household, and you hope you didn't mess up your well water supply, the only one you happen to have. It may be that laws in your jurisdiction may require that licensed professionals perform these tasks. Many states in the United States do have these requirements, and it's not just perfect to keep jobs for the water well drilling contractors. It's primarily for your own health and safety. So while you're at it, and in the process of thinking about your well, look around and remove any hazards you may have. Can you see that rain and other surface water can drain toward and pour into the casing? Definitely remove any sources of animal waste and keep animals from defecating anywhere around a water well. Get it somewhere else, because it can leak down around the outside. Assure that your on-site wastewater system, if you have one, or sewers, if you're in a sewered area, are working properly and not draining toward the well. And one way to do that is, for example, if you have had coliform positive tests or E. coli tests, and you clean a well and the test returned quickly, then the possibility that it's leaking in from something like an on-site wastewater system. Definitely keep chemicals away from the well. We sometimes see well houses where they store herbicide or some other fertilizer or something in there. It's really important to store it somewhere else away from the well, salt, anything like that. If you have a property where it's been occupied for many generations, look around an abandoned plug, and any kind of abandoned well, and any other conduits for groundwater contamination that you may find around. It's an expense, but it's going to save your groundwater supply in the long run. That's pretty much all of it in a nutshell. We could talk about this all day long and get into much more detail, but we just wanted to prompt you to be thinking about these matters. So we assume you have some questions. So, definitely please ask questions now or later. You can get back to me later as you think of something. I'll be glad to answer your questions.
Thanks,
We
Stu.
do encourage you.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, we do encourage you to visit wellowner.org and other useful sources of well water information, where you can find more information like this. Cliff? Go ahead.
Thanks. I wanted to, first of all, some people, you asked what brought people to the webinar, and some have said that they've noticed changes in their water quality in the areas you mentioned, appearance, taste, smell. So that's right on. One person said they didn't know that wells needed to be cleaned, so they were interested.
Pretty typical.
Yeah, and then there's also some folks on here apparently with county level health departments and environmental health departments who work with well owners who are interested in learning more about this. So for the people who are well owners, recognize that there are local authorities like health department, environmental health folks who are trying to acquire knowledge about this and may be able to help you with certain questions about things in your area that you should be aware of as a well owner. We do have some questions, so I'll just tick them off here. I thought rotten egg odor was sulfur that was in the water. How can well cleaning get rid of that?
Well, there's two ways of doing it. One would be that there is a persistent sulfur, actually sulfide in the groundwater, in some groundwaters in the area. For example, in northwestern Ohio, where I live in Ohio, and in northwestern Ohio, there's just naturally a lot of sulfide in the groundwater. And the well cleaning itself may not help that in the long run, but one thing it will do is remove the black iron deposits that are associated with it. And sometimes you have a temporary sulfide odor that is associated with other kinds of biofouling, where basically it's decomposition within the biofouling. And if you clean that out, the sulfide odor will diminish or go away. Or if you have those deposits of organic matter down in the bottom of the well, that's when you remove that odor. But there can be just persistent sulfide in some groundwater, and well cleaning would not remove that.
Okay, thanks. We have a question relating to fouling, so since you use that term, the question is, what do you mean by fouling of a well system? That doesn't sound good.
No, it's not particularly good. Sometimes it's always a manageable condition. Anytime you drill a well and start operating the well, there's going to be biofilms that grow on the well, and you'll just not notice them for a long time, and they're not hurting anything until they start to build up. And when we talk about biofouling, a common definition of biofouling is that it's clogged and deposited to the point of impairing water quality and impairing performance. And so at that point, no, it's not good, and you should take steps to clean the well. And usually at that point then you could get it out, and it's then something that would have to be repeated on some interval depending on the local conditions.
Okay, thank you. Here's a question. My water sometimes gets cloudy, usually after heavy rains. Is that a well cleaning issue or something else?
I suspect that that's a problem with the seal around the outside of the casing. That is, when it happens after a rain or after an extended wet period, for example, that cloudy water is seeping around somewhere around the casing, and that should possibly be examined. One way to do that is to have someone come in with a well video camera and take a look at the casing to see if there are breaks or corrosion in the casing itself, and where that stuff could come in, or a break at the bottom of the casing. Anyway, someplace where that's coming in. So it may be that the top of the well would need to be resealed or reconstructed, or it may be a point where a new well should be constructed.
Okay, thank you. Speaking of cameras, we have a question about well cameras. The question is, I assume some of those pictures were taken with a camera inside the well. I've never seen that before. Is that the only way to know if a well needs to be cleaned?
Well, no. I mean, you can, by what as going back to the beginning of the presentation, you can take water samples, and these would be from pump samples that you turn on the pump and put it in a sample bottle, or just look at the water. Or if you had a pump fail and you bring it out and you can see what's growing on the pump, those are ways you could do it. The video camera is good for examining a problem. It's more common in municipal and larger wells, obviously, where there's money for that sort of thing, and that's where most of those videos you saw came from. But there are videos that can go in smaller wells, like domestic wells, and it's a handy tool. It's something you should at least do once in a while over history of a well. it's well worth the investment.
Okay, thanks. Question about testing. I've seen water testing kits at the hardware store. Why do you need to go to a lab if you can test the water with a kit?
Well, the kits, actually, I do recommend the kit as a short-term thing where you can test it yourself and not go to the lab, or there's some quick test kits that respond rapidly to a certain type bacteria types. But the lab is, they're certified for a reason. These are people that are really qualified to do that work and are doing it properly, and are just frankly are not going to make the mistakes in the analysis that you're going to make if you're not a microbiologist. People are qualified to do things like engineer, water well contractor, microbiologist for a reason, accountant, a lawyer, whatever. So that's why those should be done by the certified laboratory. If, for example, if in a property transaction, you must, or anything where you might go into a legal environment, you have to have certified laboratory results. That's absolute must. So, beyond that, it's a decision-making process. Some parts of the world, or even the United States, you don't have such laboratories, and you have to improvise.
I want to ask a follow-up question to that. The test kits that are available, do they cover a fairly narrow range of things, or are they available for most things?
I'd have to see what the person is talking about, but there are test kits that kind of go both directions. One is that a general kit, that tube that if there's a lot of bacteria in the water, it turns black, kind of thing. And then there's also coliform test kits that are specific to that range of bacteria that grow on certain types of media, which are the total coliform, COLIFORM, a group of bacteria. But that's a broad group of bacteria themselves, and it basically just represents that somehow dirt got into the well, that's going to grow these bacteria. So yeah, it goes a little both directions, sometimes specific, sometimes very broad.
Okay, thanks. Question, should I only get my well checked for cleaning when I see symptoms, or is this something I should check at regular intervals?
I would suggest that you check, do a coliform test and nitrate tests, and perhaps some tests that are related to water quality in your area. Check with your health department on that. But I would suggest doing it annually, biannually, and once you do a well cleaning, you'll have an idea of how long it should be between well cleanings. For example, the well is drilled, and then 10 years later you do a well cleaning because of symptoms. Maybe you just factor in and budget for cleaning that well every 7 years. Something like that. So those are, the thing is about groundwater wells is that they're all individuals to some degree, and you sort of have to work out that locally.
Okay, thanks. Question, in one of the pictures, a mouse or rat was floating in the water. Is that possible?
Yeah, that is possible, particularly if that's one thing I forgot to mention as far as maintenance goes, is to keep a tight lid on top of the well. There's probably, the casing sticks out of the ground, and there's a specific well cap for that, and the well cap should be set up so that small things can't crawl in there. Well casings, spiders like well casings, wasps and bees like to build nests inside of well casings. If there's a big enough hole, mice and frogs, we regularly find frogs in municipal wells, by the way, and the Ohio Department of Health has, or had, maybe they don't have it anymore, but had a video of best of mice floating in the top of a well video. So yeah, that's possible. So it's important to have that good seal on top of it to keep things from crawling in there and dying. That's pleasant.
I wanted to ask, yeah, I wanted to ask you about that one picture. This is me asking the question. That one picture you had of looked like a pump and mounted over a big kind of square whole concrete blocks with wood boards across it.
Oh yeah.
Was that completely open to the outside? It looks like it's maybe the opposite of what you're describing with a tight seal or cap on the top of the well.
Yeah, that was selected as an example of that's bad. As you can see, possibly ascertained from the horse-drawn vehicle in the background, this is on an Amish person's property, and for religious reasons, they don't use, it has to be a motor-driven pump, in this case, in this particular case, this particular bishop. Anyway, that's another discussion. But they have you can see it's an engine-powered reciprocal pump on top of it, and then they, to accommodate that, they had this well pit, and then the well pit wasn't sealed properly at the top. As you can see, it was just covered with boards. And to top it all off, the well contractor didn't do a very good job of sealing around the outside of the casing. And this is one where the women in the family, they said, not the men and the boys, they said, were becoming ill regularly. And so we were examining that well. And you see the gasoline tank sitting there. So that's all. So many good things about this picture.
Yeah, also, correct me if I'm wrong, Stu, but as somebody who has had an issue with mice in their home, I had to hire a company to get rid of them, and one of the things they did was go around the house and fill in any cracks or holes that might allow something into the house. They said that a mouse can actually squeeze through an opening a 1/4 inch wide. Their bodies must be very malleable, and they're able to push through a very small space. So I was really surprised to find out that a crack or a little hole that big could allow a mouse in. So that's kind of an illustration.
When I was a kid, we had mice in our house, and the return air grate going back to the furnace, about maybe a little more than a 1/4 inch wide. You watch the mice just go straight into it without even stopping to squeeze through it. Yeah, doesn't take much. So keep those well caps on, and the conduit part of it hooked together next to the in the back.
Question about, it says, I've always thought that bleach was the best way to clean it well. Am I wrong? Now, I know you addressed people trying to clean their own wells by pouring a gallon of, you said chlorine, but what about bleach, like household bleach?
Well, household bleach is essentially sodium hypochlorite, which is a form of that's why I mean chlorine. That's the most common. The hyperchlorites are the most common way that we add chlorine to water wells. It's just the most convenient way. And I don't know whether the person wasn't listening to the presentation or what, but the fact is we've determined quite definitively in the last 20 years or more that it's more important to clean a well and then chlorinate it as a final step than it is to try to bleach a well with a large amount of bleach and expect anything to get done. For one thing, people think that 1 gallon of bleach is good and therefore 2 gallons or 5 gallons should be better, but it's actually really, really not. You put in a lot of bleach and it just raises the pH up so high that all you do is oxidize iron, and you don't really kill anything much. And then you have to spend a long time trying to get it out. So it's let's take on the advice that to clean wells and then chlorinate that as a final disinfection step.
Yeah, I wanted to ask just one quick follow-up. Are there any qualifiers on the use of household bleach? Because I
Yes.
seem to recall reading about shelf life and also scented versus unscented, but and whether or not they're certified as for use in drinking water.
Yeah, first of all, there's two kinds of chlorine that can be used for wells, and one is calcium hypochlorite, which is the solids, and it's either granular, usually in a granular or powdered form. And then there's liquid bleach, such as you think of as household bleach, which is sodium hypochlorite, and it's a liquid. And number one, it should, the best thing is to buy chlorine. Typically it's in 12 to 15% form that's specifically for disinfection. It's the stuff that that small water treatment plants use for their water, chlorinating the water going out into the distribution system. And that's the best stuff. If you can't get that stuff and you're going to buy household bleach, you want to buy the stuff. First of all, it should have not been on the shelf very long, because stuff that's been out for even a week or more is much weaker than listed. The second part of that is that don't buy anything with anything else in it, like if it says ultra, don't buy it. If it has any scents, don't buy that stuff, because those are contaminants, and you don't want that in your well. Buy just the plainest possible bleach from the big box store, but it should be as fresh as you can get it. Yeah.
Okay, and as far as well owners trying to disinfect, we know that well owners will do, like you said, they're free to do what they want to do, but would you say that having a professional who knows the procedures and how to do it properly would be better than taking a chance on your own skills?
That's what I would prefer and recommend. Now, there's two parts of that. One is that in many areas, water contractors are so busy that they're not going to do it. And number two, the homeowner may indeed be really careful and learn how to do it and so on. So it can be done. And so talk to your local health department professional on the water supply side, and follow procedures exactly, or maybe learn it from a water well contractor and do it yourself sometimes. We all have ideals about many things, but sometimes it's best not to. It so happens that my mother-in-law is now in her mid-80s, regularly disinfects her well, and nothing bad has ever happened to any of us. So, so there's that.
Sounds like she had some expert training from you, huh?
Yeah, she didn't listen to it all, but like, don't do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Got a question about, it says, it sounds like a lot of these cleaning procedures use modern equipment and chemicals. What did people do in the past?
Well, in the past, in the far past, there was mechanical cleaning, just by itself, and then during the 20th century, and particularly after the Second World War, is when chlorine and industrial acids became readily available. There was a time for a while when they used stuff like Calgon, sodium tripolyphosphate, and stuff like that to clean wells. It's actually in the water well journals from that era and so on. And that stuff has caused a while it gets things clean the first time, it's a bargain with the devil because it really promotes bacterial growth down the road. And so you want to stay away from stuff like that. So, and now there are a lot, in the last 15 or 20 years, there's been a availability of much better well cleaning products than what they used to use. It used to be you buy stuff off the dock like industrial muriatic acid, and it would have a metal content, other nasty things in it, and formaldehyde and so forth. And the products now, and particularly if they have NSF International seal on it, are much safer and much more effective to use.
We have a couple of questions about cost. One is, how much does it cost to get a well cleaned? And somebody was also asking about the cost of having a abandoned well plugged. Is there anything you can say about range of costs for cleaning and plugging?
Well, cleaning is going to depend on both the local economy and also the degree of what you have to do, and also the dimensions of the well. And for domestic well, it's probably going to be, it's not going to be inexpensive. It's going to be a few $100s to possibly approaching $2,000. And it may be something you need to build up to over and prepare for a period of time, just like you have to prepare for replacing a motor vehicle every so often. This is your water supply. The plugging a well, many wells can be efficiently and professionally plugged for around less than $2,000, but that's something you do once. And in most jurisdictions, that should be done by a well contractor because they have to file a report on it and so forth. And again, it's more or less the good citizen of the planet thing to do, and it's also better for your water supply, so something can't go down an old brick well and die and then contaminate your well.
Okay, I was going to ask, but I think you just answered it. Why? Somebody might say, why would I want to spend that much money if I'm drinking the water now and I'm fine? But you're saying that having an unplugged, abandoned well holds the potential of contributing to some real serious change in the water quality that could be health risk.
Oh yes, I mean the oldest, one of the oldest terrorism forms in the world is throwing dead stuff in somebody's well, and that's one. And if mice and snakes and so on could crawl down and through little tiny holes into your modern well, they certainly are going to go into that old brick well or that old drilled well from 1940. So and eventually that can just pollute the local groundwater. Yeah. So it's a self-interest as well as good thing to do. In a property transaction, you probably would be required to do it. Somebody'd look around and say, you need to plug that well or we're not buying it. So those are, just get it out of the way.
I have a question going back to the beginning of your presentation. It says you mentioned testing for a loss of capacity by filling a bucket with water. When is the best time to get a baseline measurement to compare to later?
Well, I'd say if you don't have it, if you don't have one, I'd say the time is now, anytime. You may notice seasonal variability in your water supply. For example, you have a relatively shallow well and the water level rises and drops dramatically. You may want to check that seasonally. I'd say at a property transaction, if you're going to buy a house with or a farm with a water well on it, get it tested by someone, and then you have paperwork that gives you a baseline, and then you can compare from there. So And certainly, if you drill a new well, get a good test done. Water, the water level, static water level, which is when it's not pumping, and the pumping water level, and then the flow rate with the pump there. That depends on the pump, of course. So there's that.
Are there any closing thoughts you want to share before we end today?
Well, the main thing is that, do consider this. Always remember that this is your primary water supply, and you put appropriate care into maintaining other systems and structures in your house and your family. You take care of your family's health. You go to the dentist to get your teeth cleaned. You do regular maintenance on your vehicle. A water well is a kind of a mechanical structure which is it affects your health. So it's good to maintain that, and also maintain your on-site wastewater system. But that's a topic for another day.
Okay, well, with that, we want to thank you, Stu, and we want to thank everyone for participating today. And this webinar will be available on our website. So for anyone who wants to share that link, if you know other people who have wells, we encourage you to share that link with them so that they can learn from this webinar as well. So with that, we want to wish everybody a good day, and thank you.